Fuel lines are kept away from sources of heat, and sharp bends and steep rises are avoided to reduce the possibility of vapor lock. Vapor lock is when the fuel vaporizes in the fuel lines and causes the pump to stop pumping liquid fuel or blocks the fuel flow because of the vapor pressure of the fuel. Fuel pressure produced by the engine-driven fuel pump is adjusted by the relief valve adjusting screw. The pump's relief valve controls the amount of pressure from the pump. By adjusting the screw in or out, the pump's pressure can be changed. A fuel pressure relief valve is required on engine-driven vane-type fuel pumps. Any positive displacement pump requires a pressure relief or regulating valve. If a positive displacement pump is turned with no relief valve, the pressure must have somewhere to go, or the pump will stall or stop or burst a line. It cannot operate without a pressure relief valve. Vane and gear pumps are positive displacement pumps. A pilot reports that the fuel pressure fluctuates and exceeds the upper limits whenever the throttle is advanced. The most likely cause of the trouble is a sticking fuel pump relief valve. This problem is most likely to be the relief valve sticking. When it sticks closed, the pressure builds up too much. When the pump is turned faster, throttle advanced, the pressure increases, showing that the relief valve is not functioning correctly. Fuel cross-feed systems are used in aircraft to maintain aircraft stability. The basic purpose of the cross-feed system is to allow any engine to be fed fuel from any tank. The ability to cross-feed fuel is very important to maintain aircraft stability, especially when an engine has failed. To maintain proper stability, fuel must be taken from the dead engine's tank and fed to the other engines. What causes the fuel divider valve to open in a turbine engine duplex fuel nozzle? Fuel pressure. Most flow dividers use an increase in fuel pressure to open the secondary part of the duplex nozzles. The starting pressures flow through the primary nozzle, opening until the fuel pressure reaches a point where the secondary nozzles open. Fuel pump relief valves designed to compensate for atmospheric pressure variations are known as balanced type relief valves. Balanced relief valves sense upper deck pressure and adjust fuel pressure accordingly, keeping the fuel pressure as specified amount above upper deck pressure. A fuel strainer or filter must be located between the tank outlet and the fuel metering device. If an engine equipped with a float-type carburetor backfires or misses when the throttle is advanced, a likely cause is that the accelerating pump is not operating properly. Since the accelerating pump is used to provide extra fuel for the extra air when the throttle is opened rapidly, backfire in the induction system is a sign of a lean mixture. Therefore, the problem is lack of fuel. What are the principal advantages of the duplex fuel nozzle used in many turbine engines? Provides better atomization and uniform flow patterns. The duplex fuel nozzle has two patterns for spraying the fuel. The primary outlet of the nozzle is used during start and low engine operation, while the secondary outlet is added to the primary flow for high power operation. This gives the nozzle greater range to provide for better atomization and uniform patterns. What is the purpose of the flow divider in a turbine engine duplex fuel nozzle? Creates the primary and secondary fuel supplies. A duplex nozzle is set up to provide for two separate flows from the nozzle. A flow divider separates the flow into primary and secondary flow. How often should float carburetors be overhauled? At engine overhaul. Normally, it is advised to overhaul an engine's accessory when the engine is overhauled. Most large aircraft reciprocating engines are equipped with which of the following types of engine-driven fuel pumps? Rotary vane type fuel pump. A rotary vane type pump is most often used over a diaphragm type pump on larger engines because of high flows and positive pressures needed. Which of the following turbine fuel filters has the greatest filtering action? Micron. A micron filter is used to filter out very small particles, especially in the fuel system where very small particles can do damage to the fuel system components. Where is the engine fuel shutoff valve usually located? After the firewall. The engine fuel shutoff valve is used to protect fire from spreading beyond the engine nacelle. The shutoff valve is just after the firewall as per regulations. Which of the following statements concerning a centrifugal type fuel boost pump located in a fuel supply tank is not true? The centrifugal type pump is classified as a positive displacement pump. That is false. A centrifugal type pump is not a positive displacement type pump. It is a non-positive displacement pump, which means the outlet can be closed off and the pump will not lock up. Boost pumps in a fuel system provide a positive flow of fuel to the engine pump. The purpose of the boost pump is to provide a positive flow to the engine-driven pump. Some types of engine-driven pumps depend on its positive flow. Refer to Figure 2-10-1. What is the purpose of the fuel transfer ejectors? To assist in transfer of fuel from the main tank to the boost pump sump. These ejectors use motive flow to transfer the fuel into the boost pump sump, providing a positive flow of fuel into the boost pump sump. They also mix the fuel from areas in the fuel tank so water does not build up in concentrations in the tank. What is the purpose of an engine-driven fuel pump bypass valve? To prevent a damaged or inoperative pump from blocking the fuel flow of another pump in series with it. This valve is used to prevent the interruption of fuel to the engine in case of blockage in the pump. Some installations, the bypass is used to start the engine before the engine-driven pump is operating. When an electric primer is used, fuel pressure is built up by the booster pump. The booster pump provides the pressure and the electric primer opens to allow pressure to the engine for starting. Which type of pump is commonly used as a fuel pump on reciprocating engines? Vane. A sliding vane pump is most commonly used on the fuel pump in reciprocating engines. The primary conditions that allows microorganisms to grow in the fuel in aircraft fuel tanks are the presence of water. The presence of water is required for microorganisms to grow and live in fuel tanks. These are very corrosive to the metal tanks and can clog filters. They live and feed on the fuel, hydrocarbons, and the fuel, especially in warm, moist areas. It is desirable that fuel lines have a gentle slope upward or downward and not have sharp curves or sharp rises and/or falls in order to prevent vapor lock. Vapor lock can occur in these areas of fuel system plumbing. Vapors can collect and cause vapor lock, blocking the flow of fuel in the engine. Where should the main fuel strainer be located in the aircraft fuel system? At the lowest point in the fuel system. The lowest point in the system is where the main fuel strainer must be located so the accumulation of water or other contaminants can be collected and removed from the system. Where physical separation of the fuel lines from electrical wiring or conduit is impractical, locate the fuel line below the wiring and clamp the line securely to the airframe structure. This arrangement of the fuel lines and wire bundles will prevent fuel from leaking, if there is a leak, on the wires. Fuel lines and wire bundles should never be secured together. Fuel lines should be clamped to the aircraft structure. The Federal Aviation Regulations requires the fuel flow rate for gravity systems, main and reserve, to be 150% of the takeoff fuel consumption of the engine. The FARs state that the flow rate for the gravity system be at least 150% of the engine's consumption at takeoff power. This system would rely on gravity alone to provide fuel flow to the engine. Which of the following statements regarding volumetric efficiency of an engine is true? It is possible to exceed 100% volumetric efficiency of some engines by the use of superchargers of a proper type. Volumetric efficiency, VE, is the amount of air drawn into the cylinder compared to the cylinder's displacement. The only way to exceed 100% volumetric efficiency is to use an air pump, turbo supercharger, to pump air into the cylinder as the engine operates. During what period does the fuel pump bypass valve open and remain open? When the boost pump pressure is greater than fuel pump pressure. The fuel pump bypass valve will open and remain open anytime the boost pump pressure is greater than the fuel pump discharge pressure. Kerosene is used as turbine engine fuel because kerosene has more heat energy per gallon and lubricates fuel system components. Due to its lubrication qualities and high heat energy per gallon, kerosene is used as a common turbine engine fuel. It is necessary to control acceleration and deceleration rates in turbine engines in order to prevent blowout or die-out. The fuel control meters the correct amount of fuel to the engine during acceleration and deceleration. If too much fuel is metered to the engine during acceleration before the turbine is allowed to come up to speed, the fire will blow out due to the overabundance of fuel to air. When deceleration is called for, the fuel controller makes sure there is enough fuel present for the amount of air moving through the engine, again preventing blowout or die-out. Excessively rich or lean idle mixtures results in incomplete combustion. Excessively rich or lean fuel-to-air mixtures at idle will cause inefficient burning of the mixture. There will be incomplete combustion. Which statement is true regarding proper throttle rigging of an airplane? The throttle stop on the carburetor must be contacted before the stop in the cockpit. When rigging the throttle of an aircraft engine, the stop at the carburetor must be contacted before the stop in the cockpit to assure the aircraft is getting full throttle function. Maximum power is normally considered to be developed in the reciprocating engine with a fuel-air mixture ratio of approximately 12:1. Maximum power in a reciprocating engine is produced with a fuel mixture of 12:1, or 83 thousandths. A method commonly used to prevent carburetor icing is to preheat the intake air. The use of a carburetor heat or the preheating of the intake air is used to prevent carburetor ice. Into what part of a reciprocating engine induction system is de-icing alcohol normally injected? The airstream ahead of the carburetor. De-icing alcohol is normally sprayed through a ring at the air inlet of the carburetor. What part of an aircraft in flight will begin to accumulate ice before any other? The carburetor. As the fuel is converted from a liquid to a vapor inside the carburetor, ice can form, even when no water vapor is visible in the air. Carburetor ice forms more readily than other types. Carburetor icing may be eliminated by which of the following methods? Alcohol spray and heated induction air. The formation of carburetor ice can be prevented by heating the induction air or using alcohol spray. Where would a carburetor air heater be located in a fuel injection system? None is required. Carburetor heat is not required on fuel-injected systems. However, most injection systems have alternate air doors that automatically open in case ice forms on the inlet air filter. The use of the carburetor air heater when it is not needed causes a decrease in power and possibly detonation. The use of carburetor heat causes excessively rich mixtures, as well as possible detonation if it is used when not needed. As manifold pressure increases in the reciprocating engine, the density of the air in the cylinder increases. On a reciprocating engine, manifold pressure is the measure of the absolute pressure of the air inside the induction system. However, Manifold pressure means the greater density of air being fed to the cylinders. What protects an engine when the fuel pump seizes? The shear section of the pump drive will break before any damage to the engine. What happens to the excess fuel that is not required by an engine in a constant displacement pump? The pressure relief valve bypasses excess fuel back to the inlet side of the pump. What is the purpose of a pressurization and dump valve in a turbine engine fuel system? The P&D valve provides a positive cutoff of fuel to the fuel nozzles when the engine is shut down to prevent fires, caulking, and provides a positive pressurization for operation during the start process. What are the causes of vapor lock? Low fuel pressure in the fuel lines, high fuel temperature and high temperature around the lines, and excessive fuel turbulence. How is foreign matter kept out of the carburetor fuel system? The fuel system has a fuel strainer at the lowest point and a strainer before the fuel enters the carburetor. How is the formation of ice prevented in turbine fuel? Air to liquid or liquid to liquid heat exchangers and anti-ice additives to the fuel.